Thanks for coming, everyone. What a crazy time. I'm joined by a bunch of Monday team members. If you've figured out how to activate grid view on Google Hangouts, then you might be able to see them. Wave Monday team members so people can see who you are. If I haven't met you before, because it looks like there's a bunch of you who I don't know, my name's Amanda. I'm one of two partners at Monday Creative. We are a branding and content marketing agency based here in Vancouver. I think there's some people from all over the US joining us as well who might be less familiar with us. But that's who we are. So keep yourself on mute throughout this. Again, drop your questions into the chat bar. After today, we're going to consolidate a bunch of the thoughts and possibly share this video depending on how good the quality of it is. And so if you're not already on our email list, so if you found out about this through our social channels or through a Facebook group that I posted on, feel free to hop over to our website, mondaycreative.co, scroll all the way down to the footer and subscribe to our e-newsletter. We don't send things out very often at all. It's really only special occasions like this. So we're not going to barrage you with any kind of content, but if you want to get the insights from this or share it with any friends or colleagues, that's the place to do it. So goal for today, what we really wanted to do by having you all gather with us is just open up this conversation and give you ideas for how you can still thrive during this crisis. And our hope is that this is the first of many AMAs that we do and that we can just start creating some content that's really relevant to where you and your business are at. So we're going to talk about some really easy tweaks that you can make right now to your marketing and branding, some tips to help you pivot, some things you can DIY, whether you're a small brand or a big one, and then maybe some things you want to think about investing in later on as we settle into this as a new reality. So before we move into the question time, I'm going to walk you through 4 steps you can be taking right now to help smooth the rest of this ride through the crazy season, however long it might take. And then we're going to look at 3 particular areas that we at Monday think you should be leaning into heavily for your content and marketing during this season. But before I dive into those steps and key areas, the first question that we at Monday have been asking ourselves and just tackling is it even cool to sell right now? Obviously, millions of people have lost their jobs. They're on reduced salaries. In general, like, no one wants to capitalize on a crisis. But when I look at the invite list of people, I think I can safely say that none of you are people that have stockpiled hand sanitizer or wipes or toilet paper. You're all legitimate businesses, and you're just doing the things you've always done that your customers rely on you for. So it's not wrong to sell now, but we think it really comes down to the spirit behind your selling. So are you convincing or even exploiting, or are you actually helping? So that spirit is kind of your gauge to whether or not it's good to be selling. Are you providing something that people are seeking? And an example of a company that wasn't doing this well came up for me this past week. I was targeted on Instagram by an ad for shoes that had the hashtag United Against Coronavirus, and it was over a pair of like strappy sandals. So there was some dissonance there already. And the call to action was donate, volunteer, talent, which is a weird call to action. So of course I clicked because I was curious. And when I landed on the site, there was literally nothing about any sort of coronavirus initiative. It was just a straight up e-commerce sales experience. And it felt like a really gross bait and switch. And it was just like left a bad taste in my mouth. And my hope is that nobody would be doing anything like that, capitalizing on a crisis to get people to click through and then just trying to sell things. There's nothing wrong with selling things. Just be clear and explicit about what you're doing. On the other end of the spectrum, one of the clients that we work with is a clothing company for kind of middle-aged women, which I guess I now am, but I don't think I'm their target market, called Neon Buddha. And they just offered 1,000 pieces of clothing, any piece, to frontline workers as part of an Unsung Heroes campaign. And there was just like a spirit of benevolence behind it that we thought was really sweet. And I think that's the type of initiative that you would want to be attaching yourself to. So in general, as a team, what we've been thinking about is, what does it mean to sell generously? And if you live in Vancouver, you've probably seen some of the cool initiatives that have been happening around town. And in particular, a local restaurant called Say Mercy. They just opened in the last few months. They were one of the first to mobilize post kind of lockdown to offer something called staff meals. So you could order these kind of quick, easy to access meals, and you can also auto add funds for the food bank, or there's an option to purchase meals for frontline workers. So, you know, they're selling and serving their own business, but also serving themselves in a really wonderful way. Just a quick reminder, if you're not on mute, be sure to add mute yourself while we're chatting. So before I dive into the 4 steps, some quick stats, just some food for thought. A research company in Austin just shared these this week. I thought they were really, really interesting. So 73% of people say that the way a company acts during a crisis will affect future purchases. 43% of consumers say they want to hear from a brand during a crisis. 15% say they do not. I suspect those are the 15% that aren't really active on Instagram anyway. And thinking back to the 2008 financial crisis, brands that held on to their share of voice during that crisis recovered 9 times faster than those that went dark. So you don't want to go dark. So with all of that in mind, here are 4 steps that we think you should be taking right now to kind of manage marketing during this crisis. So step number 1 is do a quick content audit triage. Your first step, if you have any kind of content going out into the world that's pre-scheduled or that's automated, do a quick review of it and make sure that there's nothing that would seem dramatically out of place. So we, for our clients, tend to schedule content 1 to 2 months in advance. So the very first week that we were in quarantine, the first thing that we did was go back over everything, make sure there's nothing that mentions travel, nothing that mentions gathering or being on the go. There's all these things that wouldn't normally raise a flag, but might seem kind of tone deaf now. So then you want to make sure that you connect with any influencers if you're a brand that works with influencers, and make sure they're behaving. If you've read any news lately about the influencer world, you want to make sure that your influencers aren't running off to the Hamptons or taking a cross-country road trip in an RV. You just want to make sure that they're representing you well. And then, you know, in general, as times start to get a bit tougher, you really, if you're not already, you need to be making the move to e-com as soon as possible. For a future AMA, we'll probably be doing an e-commerce 101. That's a primer on how to get your email, product copy, photography, and merchandising on your site up to snuff. But in general, that's the one area where you need to pivot really quickly, and that's kind of the one investment area that you need to think about making. If you know you need to make the pivot to e-com, a really good person to talk to is our pal Steve Kruger from The Jibe, who may or may not be on this call. But if anyone is interested in talking to some e-com web experts, I can connect you with Steve and his team at any time. So in general, in your triage, the thing to consider is that people might not be spending money, but they have more time to browse than they ever have. I don't know about you, but I've definitely been doing a little bit of window shopping during this time. And a lot of them are going to be adding things to their cart for the future. So if you haven't already invested in good automation, now is the time to get things like an abandoned cart email together. And you might want to make the delay in your abandoned cart email just a little bit longer than usual, or have it trigger kind of once people are back at work and things have smoothed out a little bit. But every brand, if you sell online, you should have some good automated emails. So if someone is looking at a specific product on your site or put something in their cart, they should be getting a trigger down the line to say, hey, did you still want to buy this? Invest some time and some energy into getting those set up. And then the last part of your content triage is just to look at your advertising. There's definitely fewer advertisers right now, which means that the cost of advertising is down because the competition is down. So you probably are wondering, like, how should you be investing in this? And now is probably not the time to be focusing on selling, but to use this as a time to grow your following and to grow your email list. So invest in digital ads that are going to drive email subscription. And then when people do start spending money again, you'll have a much bigger list to sell to. Second step to take right now is just to acknowledge that it's not business as usual. Don't avoid the topic. You don't need to be somber or melodramatic, but and you also don't need to be a pandemic thought leader, and it's okay to inject some humor. But I know that first week that we were moving into lockdown, when businesses across the city were closing, we got so many emails and the tone of them varied so much. But we really, really loved one that we got from our friends at Tight Club. It was super honest and empathetic, and it pulled from their brand language that just felt so familiar. Like Katie wrote it with a check-in question, which is the same thing she does when she starts all of her classes. And it felt really real. Yeah, realistically, this is the first time that we've ever been having the same conversation all over the world. It's this one giant shared experience, and every brand is always trying to create shared experiences. So this is kind of the time to step into the zeitgeist and recognize that people are baking bread and doing puzzles and watching Tiger King, and tap into that and use some of that in your marketing. Step number 3, don't be precious. Things don't have to be perfect. We all know that everyone's scrambling a little bit, and there's some forgiveness in that. So if you're making the move to e-commerce, don't delay in getting your products online just because you don't have perfect product photography. Now's a really good time to experiment with new channels. Maybe you've been thinking about making the move onto TikTok. This is probably a good time. But most importantly, just don't stop producing content just because you can't produce it to the polished standard that you maybe would have in the past. So there's some ways to think about doing this. It's totally okay to go lo-fi. We've seen 2 examples that we love of this. A company called Paloma Wool canceled the production of their summer lookbook, and instead they just sent pieces to collaborators and kind of influencers that they love, who just set up photo shoots in their homes, and that was their summer lookbook. Or if you've been watching The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon, you know that it's really fun to watch these kind of ad hoc broadcasts from his home. Use your fans and your team. So user-generated content, or UGC, has never been more relevant. Our friends at the dress company Park and Fifth did something recently where they showed multiple members of their team wearing the same dress different ways. Topo Designs, which is a company out of Colorado that we really love, shared their team's work from home looks. Just use the people that you have at your disposal. Don't be afraid to go live. So our friends at Lululemon and Doer Denim are both doing a really good job of just doing live streams on Instagram, and that's like, it just doesn't have to be perfect. And think about just simplifying the process. We work with a lot of brands that do really elaborate photo shoots, but you can find collaborators that can do it all. So my business partner, Lindsay, her husband, Chase, is a photographer for a lot of brands. And in the absence of being able to go out with other people because they're quarantining together, he's just using Lindsay's hands in the photos. He does a lot of photos of fly fishing, and they're still able to generate content for his clients even while they're quarantining. And then finally, the last part of keeping it simple is, and not being precious, is just repurpose what you already have. So if you have a backlog of imagery, think about how you can collage or crop or find ways to make old content look fresh. And it might even just be acknowledging that you're posting old content. A brand that we love called Entire World has just been reposting some favorite campaigns from 2 years ago and recognizing that it's a throwback. And then step number 4, reassess your offering. So this doesn't mean changing your entire product strategy just yet, but thinking about how you show your product in a different way. So think about how you can re-merchandise your e-commerce experience for max cozy or max escape. Like, tap into what people are doing right now. We don't need high heels. We need comfy shoes and clogs. Well done, Everlane, launching their clog line last week. We need stretchy pants and cozy fleeces and candles and spa treatments and tips for how to remove our gel manicures that we got pre-quarantine. You might also want to think about just tapping into your archives and selling some of your old inventory. So bring back the classics. And in general, just making a mental adjustment about what you're selling. You can still try to convert, but you're converting to connection right now and converting to good service and not necessarily converting to dollars right now. Okay, quick little transition. 3 areas that we think you should be leaning into right now in your content. And then we're going to turn it over to you guys in about 5 minutes. So the first thing that you should be leaning into is lean into the idea of help. So this is a time to be fostering goodwill. People want to see you as a contributor, and it's okay if this is just a time where you focus on getting people to like you and to be an advocate for you. So we've seen some people do this in really innovative ways. Arc'teryx over on the North Shore here in Vancouver recently started manufacturing medical gowns. Reigning Champ, another Vancouver brand, is donating robes to frontline workers. And one of our past clients, Asmar Equestrian, did something that I think is super innovative. They created the COVID assistance program to help horse trainers and coaches who are totally out of work because nobody's going to barns right now. And they turn them into affiliates for the brand, which means that if those coaches and trainers sell to people, they get a commission for all of the sales that they do to kind of help sustain them through this hard time. The second thing to lean into is connection. So it might not be the time to overtly push a product, but it's definitely a good time to show what your brand stands for and the people behind the brand. So some ways to build connection that we think are really good is give people a reason to gather and something to rally behind. There's a running brand that we love called District Vision, and they're doing these live breathwork and meditation sessions and this mindful athlete course. And then Doer Denim is doing these daily live fitness classes that I've definitely been tapping into on a regular basis. You can also really focus on gifting. And this is an idea that comes straight from our friend Laura Melling, who is in this session. People are scaling back, but you know, we're at home and we're missing out on things like birthday parties and weddings that were planned. And so for me, all the money that I'm not spending on eating out with people I love and celebrating, I'm making up for it with deliveries. So I'm sending bottles of wine, I'm sending candles and Palo Santo and books. And the idea that Laura had that I thought was amazing was for her team and for her husband's team, they put together these work from home kits for their staff where they assembled a bunch of their favorite local brands. Woodlock Candles, Windfall Cider, just this idea of positioning yourself as a brand for gifting, I think is going to be really effective. And that leads me to another way you can lean into connection, which is just team up with other small businesses. Think about how you can bundle your products or services with other small businesses to jointly support each other. And just be yourself, show behind the scenes, make the human connection to your brand. I think we love what Bon Appetit has been doing. If you guys have been following them, they're giving a peek into the kitchens of their chefs because you can't go into the test kitchen right now. And it's such simple stuff. They're just having their chefs show things like their favorite kitchen tools or a tour of their pantry. And then the last area to lean into is escape. So everything's canceled. 2020 is canceled. Music festivals, art shows, running races. So now's the time to give your customers an alternate virtual experience. A few brands that are doing a great job of this. The high-end brand Kenzo is doing these weekly DJ events that they're hashtagging with Stay Home with Kenzo. The Getty Museum and the Rijksmuseum, you guys have probably seen these really wonderful between art and quarantine posts that they're getting people to do where people replicate famous works of art and then pair their pictures with the originals, and they just are using a few items that they have around their house. Our friends over at Herschel are doing a really cute illustration series called the Homework Series, and they're using their existing tagline, which is enjoy your stay, and they're tagging on at home. So enjoy your stay at home and having favorite illustrators just remix the brand however they want. And then Paloma Wool did this amazing house party. So you can see clips of it where there are dozens of people just twerking on Zoom and having the best time together. But creating that moment of escape doesn't have to be really complicated. The brand Ferragamo just did some fun Instagram story trivia to give people a little moment to dive in. So I think there's so many interesting ways that brands can tap into this idea. Like, I would love to see a brand team up with a movement like Dance Church in Portland and do a free party, or I want to see like live Instagram concerts where I get to peek into musicians' homes. An actor who I know has been doing live readings of Harry Potter every evening at 6 p.m. It'd be so amazing for a company to sponsor something like that. So in general, just give people something to look forward to and feel like they've had an experience. So summing it up, 3 things to lean into: help, connection, and escape. And before I turn it over to your questions, 2 things that I would say are things not to do. Don't just slap on a Band-Aid and make fake meaning or connection. So if you're gonna do it right. I made that reference to that shoe company at the beginning. Just make sure that you're not faking it. And definitely don't stop talking to customers. Use the channels you have, especially email, but keeping it within reason, and just like be a consistent presence in their lives. All right, so I'm gonna turn it over to you guys if you have any questions. It looks like a few people have dropped some good references in the chat window, but I'll give you 2 minutes to drop some questions in, and if not, then I'm gonna turn it over to my own list of questions. How's everyone doing? All right. Let me dive in with my first question that I had, and I'll give you guys a chance to add some more questions as we go. Jennifer McLeod. How much info is too much? Getting lots of e-news that read like long letters. That's a really good question. You wanna, I mean, I'm of 2 minds about this. People are at home and they're actually reading emails. I have definitely been reading more marketing emails than usual. But I would say, you know, when Linz and I both come from Kit and Ace, we would send on average 2 emails a week. And I think right now, 1 email a week would be the max you'd want to send if you're selling product. If you are in the services business, I would definitely slow it down to less than that. I don't know if anyone from my team has any thoughts that they want to drop in the chat window, but I think, you know, you have a sales cycle that you need to keep moving, but also recognize people are not shopping right now. So maybe balancing product emails and brand emails are really important. Leah Nelson says, who is reading Harry Potter? And that is an actor named John Voth. Let me see what his Instagram handle is, because it's really, really delightful. Asks, any suggestions for a service-based business? I'm a photographer and can't do the whole gifting e-com side of things. Yes, I do have some suggestions. And Laura basically asked the same question. So something that we're doing at Monday, which we're going to be launching next week, is this idea of pre-selling blocks of hours at a discounted rate. So we've definitely seen our pipeline totally dry up in the last month. And it's just, you know, we're motivated. I think we have a whole team of people that we know are mega talented and need to be used. And we have about, you know, a month's worth of steady work ahead of us, but then it starts to taper out. And so we are going to be offering our time at a discount, whether it's advice, whether it's design services or copywriting. There's ways to adapt and just make it more appealing. And the other thing, and this is less to do with marketing and this is just business, is look at your payment terms. So there might be things that people really need and want to do right now, but they feel nervous about having the cash right now. And so consider just delaying your payment terms. Not super practical marketing advice, but that's how we're thinking about it as a service business. Beth Hall, what are the best ways to build lists? It really depends on what kind of a business you have, but if you are a business that sells product, or I don't know if this would apply to your business, Beth, just as a consultant, but one of the best ways is to use paid ads and use it to drive to subscribe. So when you advertise on Facebook or Instagram, you can have different calls to action. And if you're trying to move product, your call to action is going to be to shop now. But if you're trying to build your list, it's just going to be subscribe, and you're going to send someone right over to your subscription page. Likewise, if you're sending people to your website, you know, something as simple as a 15% or even a bigger discount on your first purchase if you sign up. And so making sure that you have an e-newsletter subscription pop up on your website. So every time someone hits your website, they're getting hit with a invitation to subscribe. And when you do create that email subscription box, make sure that it's clear what people are going to get out of it. You want to make sure that they have, there's going to be some clear value that they get. So usually with product, again, that's a discount, but it might also be, if you're a consultant, it might be being really explicit about the types of insights that they're going to get. And if you, as a consultant, Beth, if you are building your list, you want to make sure that you're actually delivering something to those people. So don't make a promise that you're not going to fulfill, and you know, they sign up and then they're just getting nothing. Leah Nelson, real question. How do we go back to high fidelity, high-end content after a huge wave of user gen style content? That's a good question that I haven't given a lot of consideration to. I feel like we're going to have to ease into it. You know, working in outdoor industry, user-generated content can be so beautiful that it might be a little bit easier for a company like Arc'teryx to make that transition, because people are still getting outside and they're still in the woods, and so they're going to be taking some really gorgeous stuff. But I think there's going to be like some staggering that you have to do. Yeah, I'm going to think some more about that, because I think that's a really smart question. Lindsay gave a response to Jen's earlier question about how often to be emailing. And her response is keep emails short and link out to blog posts or hidden pages that have more info. So share just enough context in your email to drive people to click through, and do a gut check before sending. Would I read this whole email? Lindsay is our resident email expert. She lives and breathes this stuff. So that's some really good insight. Okay, with that in mind, if there's no other questions, I might just hop over to some of the ones that we have, and I'll keep an eye on the feed to see if you guys have any more questions. So something that we've been really wondering, and that a couple of our clients have asked, is it like, should you have a sale? And if my response about offering some discounted hours are any indication, yes. If your product isn't moving right now, then yes, it's probably okay to have a sale. Even if you're not traditionally a markdown brand, this is definitely that one rare opportunity where it's okay to go on sale, or if you're in the service industry, to reduce your rates. And this is a chance to do it strategically and for a limited time only. You still don't want to train your customer to expect discounts. So this week, as part of my kind of quarantine homemaking, I finally bought myself a Sonos. Sonos went deeply on sale. It's a brand that doesn't usually go on sale because they're just offering kind of one classic product that people really want. But I think they recognize if they want to keep things moving, now's a really good time to do a discount. So I ordered one at $70 off, and you probably can too. Yeah, and there's a way to do it, I think, really beautifully and effectively. We, as a team at Monday, we love the brand Everlane. Pretty much everything they do we think is beautiful. And they're doing a sale right now. And they sent out a plain text email, so it felt different than their usual emails right away. And they made it really clear this is something they don't do very often, but they kept it really elevated and on brand. It was still a well-written quality email that was specifically designed to convert. So I'd say if you do go on markdown, keep it on brand. We got another email from a brand we follow today that was like 40% off, which to me just seemed like, oh, that's a little extreme. That starts to devalue the brand. So I think there's a threshold at which it starts to be a little too much. Let's check some more questions. So Rachel Gertz, everyone seems to be offering webinars right now. What do you recommend instead so we don't overwhelm folks? Well, from this webinar, that's a great question. Let me think about this for a minute. I still think there's lots to be said for good written content. I've been blocking out some time to do a lot of reading. There's been so much COVID-related content, and every week I've just been kind of bookmarking everything, and then in the mornings, once a week, I've been diving deep, and I still think written content can be effective. There have definitely been a lot of webinars, and I would say, and I hope that we are putting this into practice, just make sure that there's substance behind it and that it's not a waste of people's time. Lindsay responded to Leah's question earlier about how you make the transition to good kind of hi-fi content after having lots of user-generated content. And she says, we might start to see a mashup of UGC and high-fidelity content when we can all hang out again. So instead of models, brands might instead cast customers, athletes, and real people, but continue to invest in professional photographers and studios, etc. So it could be jarring to all of a sudden go from just like the regular consumer being in all your photographs to having models once again, but maybe the quality of photography will be the first thing that goes up. So who knows? Rachel Gertz, thanks for the kind words. Okay, I've got a few more questions that I'm going to run through, and I'll still keep watching for any questions that are in the chat window. But another question that someone approached us with recently is it okay, like, should you release a new product? And I would say yes, but I think you really need to be cautious about how relevant it is. I think I referenced Everlane launching a clog this week. That felt like a really appropriate, comfortable shoe, especially in America where people wear shoes indoors. I think it hit the moment. But if you were gonna launch like a strappy summer sandal, probably less practical. But then the other question is, should you launch a new brand? And kind of our team gut check was, it's probably not the right time to launch a new brand unless it's something that is meeting a very specific need that everyone is feeling right now. So, you know, if you have like a really good innovative slipper brand or beautiful stylish face masks or gloves that don't feel like silicone or rubber for people like me who hate the feel of rubber gloves, then by all means launch that brand. But if you're launching a new, more like consumption-focused brand, maybe wait a little bit. Other questions. So the thing that we've been thinking about a lot too is, for those who are making the shift to e-commerce, especially if it's your first time making the switch to e-commerce, where should you actually invest time and money in the experience? You're probably trying to get this up really, really fast. So you might not want to invest in a super robust platform that's going to take 6 to 12 months to build. You probably can't invest in really fancy product imagery. So where do you want to focus in order to kind of have some quick short-term gains? So in order of priority, if you already have an existing e-com site and you want to get the most out of it, first thing to do is think about your merchandising. So putting the right product right up front on your website, hiding some of the things that are less relevant in this day and age, and bringing up anything that has to do with nesting or being cozy at home, that like taps into the moment that we're having. The second thing to do is look at your SEO, so your search engine optimization. How relevant are your product names and your product descriptions in terms of what people are searching for? If you've never invested in product copy, now is the time, because everyone's shopping online. People aren't browsing the shelves at your store. They're looking for a really specific thing and they're using really specific search terms to find it. There's probably a few things more important that you can do. Something little you can do on the topic of user-generated content is add UGC to your product pages. So if people are generating content for you from their homes, get it in there and just start getting some fresh content around it. And then there's just some little tweaks that you can make. So if you have product pages, or sorry, product category pages, you can use the promo tiles on your category pages really strategically to be showing those more relevant products and be linking back to the products that you know people are searching for. And you can think about bundling products at a reduced rate. So if you know there's like, 5 things that people are consistently shopping for on your site right now, package them up and give a discount when you buy all of them. And then probably last question that I'll tackle is this notion that, so a lot of brands, especially in the clothing space, are canceling whole seasons right now. And so for marketers, we're suddenly faced with this task of making a single season of product and a single season of maybe photography last twice as long as we've ever had to. So how do you think about stretching your content to still be putting something fresh in front of your consumers all the time? So one thing is to think about ways to elevate your existing e-commerce photography. So your photography that's maybe just shot on a white background, how do you turn that into something that feels like lifestyle photography that you can put onto Instagram or Facebook? And it can be as simple as some fun like collaging and gridding or cropping in on the image to bring certain features forward, or using your team to show the product in a fresh way in an interesting light. Giving your influencer community some tasks to do in the shoots. We've seen some people putting product on dogs, which is adorable and very shareable. So I think it's just a matter of continuing to share and being real about it. And like we said, it's still really okay to do lo-fi. Okay, going over the comments. Steve Kruger, our e-commerce genius, says, there's a significant amount of opportunity for digital engagement. What about the opposite? Any old school strategies working with purpose? Phone, snail mail. Okay, this is a conversation that we had today about snail mail. We had some differing opinions on our team. I was thinking, okay, now would be a really interesting time to invest in print, but I think some people have fear about mail right now. So it's kind of gauging, are people going to be iffy about actual tactile things right now? But from a services standpoint, I do think the phone is really relevant, and I'm definitely going to be using it in the coming weeks. I'd love to hear from other people what they think about this. Okay, Damien, as a science research not-for-profit, my company is aiming to be a voice of truth during this pandemic, but how much is too much? We don't want to be forcing even more COVID content into people's social media feeds, but don't want to only be talking about how our team is working from home right now. So Lindsay had some initial thoughts. Start by asking your audience what they want to know. Use Instagram's poll tool, send a short survey via email, and either way, being curious about what your audience needs is a thoughtful way to stay engaged rather than shooting in the dark. And I love that. I think that's super smart. By all means, just like test the water, engage, and ask for their feedback and make it a reciprocal conversation. If you're continually having a one-way conversation where you don't know what they want, then that's probably a sign that you need to change the way you're marketing anyway. You need to have channels for them to be giving you feedback. And so just, ask them, what do you want from us and how much is too much? And use the channels that you already have to do that. Chase White says, should brand voice for companies or for contractors stay the same right now? Do brands have an obligation to address the elephant in the room, or do people maybe want to be distracted with a more steady business as usual approach? So like I said at the beginning, I think it's worth at a certain point addressing the elephant in the room, or at least not skimming over it. So I love opening the marketing emails that I've been getting this week and seeing the creative, cute ways people are inserting mentions of this reality that we're all living in right now. It just creates this feeling of solidarity, and it makes me like the brand better. I mean, obviously, as a writer and someone who is the biggest advocate of consistent brand voice, I think that's something that should never change. I think your brand voice should always stay true. If you are playful, there's a way to address the reality of COVID in a way that's still playful. And I mentioned that email that I got from Katie Gallagher from Type Club as a perfect example. It was just so empathetic, but also a little bit just like cool. And it embodied everything that Type Club stands for. And that's the benefit of having a really clearly articulated brand voice, is you can step into a topic like this with less risk. And know that you're staying true to who you are, and you're not just like shooting in the dark and all of a sudden becoming really serious or becoming overly playful. You can just maintain the steady state of what your actual brand voice is. And on the topic of phone calls, Beth Hall, who is a consultant, says, I've had some great successes with phone as a service business, therapist and high performance coach. Lots of interesting collaborations coming out of it. So yeah, it's a good time to be picking up the phone. People are not interacting all day, every day, and so it's kind of refreshing to just pick up the phone and have a call. A few parting words. One is we loved putting this AMA together, and we want to have more. We would absolutely welcome your suggestions of what would be helpful topics. Just so you know, some of the things that we're thinking about in the future are, like I mentioned, just an Ecom 101. And we'll probably draw from some of our network of experts to pull that together. Another is retail design for physical distancing. So once this quarantine period is finished and we're back out in the world, there's probably still going to be some social distancing that we need to think about. So how do you create a branded experience while your salespeople are wearing masks? How do you make that a good branded experience? Or how do you create good, natural, intuitive flow through your retail space and make it feel welcoming but still safe for people? And then we probably are eventually going to want to think about rethinking your event strategy as well. We all know events are a big part of marketing and branding. And we have lots of friends who work in that space, and we would love to tap into those. Yeah, I think that's it. This is wonderful. Thank you all for joining, for participating. By all means, follow up with us if you have any specific questions or things that you would love us to address in the future. Like I said, if you are not part of our email list, head over to our website, subscribe in the footer to make sure that you can get some of this content and share it with anyone that you want. So thank you guys. Have a wonderful evening. Enjoy.